Welcome back to True Stories, the place where real-life encounters blur the line between ordinary and terrifying. Tonight's story takes us inside a quiet Airbnb stay that was supposed to mark the start of something beautiful. Instead, it became a chilling reminder that behind any door, danger can be waiting. This is not fiction. This is a true story you'll never forget.
I was never the kind of person who felt at home in my own town. Growing up in a place called Briarcliff, a quiet little community tucked deep in northern Montana, life felt more like a waiting room than a story worth telling. The nights were too still, the streets too empty, and the only excitement was the flicker of neon lights from a worn-out diner by the highway. My father walked out before I turned 9, and my mother spent every waking hour juggling 2 jobs to keep food on the table. I had no brothers, no sisters, just long, silent evenings in a house that always felt too big. Conversations with people never came easy. It wasn't that I disliked them, I just never seemed to belong. By the time I hit 24, I knew I had to leave. I found work in Portland, Oregon, managing shipments for a warehouse. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Most of my relationships existed through screens, apps and messages, jokes sent late at night when I could think about the perfect reply. Then came Celine. I met her on Tinder, and she was unlike anyone I had ever spoken to. Her laugh came through even in text. Her wit was sharp, and her crooked smile on video calls made her seem both daring and shy. She lived in a city called Maplewood, almost 5 hours from me, but somehow distance didn't matter. 6 weeks of late-night calls and inside jokes turned into one question. When do we meet? We planned for me to drive out for a weekend. I would book an Airbnb, and we'd finally see each other face to face. Maplewood, however, had a classic car festival that weekend, which meant almost everything was fully booked. The only place left was an older house on the edge of town divided into rented rooms. The photos showed a simple setup: bed, desk, shared bathroom. It wasn't ideal, but it was cheap and available. When I arrived that Friday, the house looked worn and tired, the kind of place that carried decades in its walls. A dented mailbox leaned against the fence, and the paint had started to peel. My host, a wiry woman named Teresa, greeted me with a quick smile and pointed me toward the basement room I had booked. The basement was colder than upstairs, the walls bare concrete, pipes crisscrossing the low ceiling. My room had a flimsy latch for a lock, but I brushed off the unease. It was only one night. That evening, I finally met Celine at a cafe downtown. She was even more beautiful in person. We walked the streets, ducked into old bookstores, and laughed until the night blurred. It felt like the beginning of something real. But back at the Airbnb, the night took a darker turn. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps outside my room. At first, I thought it was Teresa doing laundry. Then came a faint click. I reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and froze. Standing in the doorway was a man I had never seen before. His pale face caught the light, his messy hair hanging low, and in his hand, his phone, pointed directly at me. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked. He didn't flinch, he just smiled, a chilling, deliberate grin. "Just making memories," he whispered. Every instinct screamed to run. I threatened to call the police, and he giggled, a soft, eerie sound, before stepping back into the hallway and vanishing. I locked the latch with shaking hands and sat awake until daylight seeped through the basement window. By sunrise, I grabbed my bag and left without looking back. Teresa was nowhere in sight. The house was quiet, too quiet. I checked into a cheap motel instead and told Celine everything. She was horrified and begged me not to spend another night there. I never saw that man again. Airbnb refunded me after I reported what happened, but no one ever gave me an explanation. It's been years since that night. Celine and I are still together, but when people ask how we first met, I usually leave out the part about the stranger in the basement. And yet, when I lie awake at night, I sometimes still see that smile in the dark, hear that whisper in my head. Moral of the story. The truth is, you never really know what waits behind a stranger's door, and sometimes saving a little money is not worth the cost of your safety.